Well, hey guys, I'm Nick and welcome back to the channel. Well, today we're talking about Star Trek Lower Decks Season 3, Episode 8, entitled Crisis Point 2 Paradoxus. This is the kind of follow-up to the Season 1 episode Crisis Point, where we saw, Mariner creating her own very theatrical and cinematic holodeck program. And this time around, Boimler gets to create his very cinematic and epic scale holodeck program, which kind of has got a bit of everything in it. We've got a lot of nods to kind of other Star Trek feature films, particularly, I guess, Star Trek sort of 2, I suppose. We've also got shades of Star Trek Nemesis, and everything is just a bit bigger scale and a bit grander in this week's episode of Lower Decks. Guys, if you haven't subscribed to Sci-Finatics yet, please don't forget to do so. Click on that big red subscribe button to stay up to date and current with all the latest Star Trek news on YouTube. Okay, so basically we start off with this big cinematic opening sequence, which we've kind of seen before. They released this opening sequence previously as kind of a sneak peek into the season, where we're going to see Boimler as this Bucephalus dagger captain character of the Sovereign class vessel, the Wayfarer, and taking on the Romulans in a big mission to bring back this artifact that they've stolen, the chronogami, which enables the folding of time and everything, so they can travel through different parts of time and change the timelines and everything. It's all your typical kind of, all your sort of Star Trek feature films rolled into one kind of scenario. When we're going through the mission, we've got, a space station with scientists and everything, very, very similar to what we saw in Star Trek 2 with Carol Marcus and David Marcus and everything there, right down to the little pulsating lasers and even the graphics on screen, where they were talking about different computer, simulations and how the chronogami thing works. We're all really kind of, very similar to sort of the Genesis animations and so forth, which we got back in Star Trek 2. So it was kind of had a bit of a retro theme aspects of this holodeck program quite a bit. We've got characters kind of talking in sort of jargon and just making up what generally I think Star Trek actors refer to as a techno-babble, but just a whole bunch of made up words by these Starfleet engineers and scientists and so forth, which was quite funny, with Mariner calling them out on their made up word quota or whatever it was. And there's all these little nods as well to the planets that they're traveling to throughout this holodeck program that they've made up. I kind of laughed. One of the planets was called Tatasciore or whatever, which obviously is the last name for Fred Tatasciore, who voices Shax in Lower Decks. So there's all these little kind of nods to in-jokes and so forth, which is kind of fun. I know on one of the planets or whatever, before they did the whole little chase sequence on the speeder bike things, we had some guy holding a stuffed koala. The whole koala reference came into it quite a few times before, when characters were ascending to a different plane of existence and going into the afterlife and everything. They'd always, for some reason, see a giant smiling koala. So we've got the koala going on in this episode as well. And we kind of see our heroes jumping around different time periods, 2341 algae crisis, which sort of seems a bit random, with giant octopuses and weird things going on there. I love the moment in this episode when Mariner kind of cracks it, and the holodeck program is going off on a weird tangent, and she's not really happy with how it's going down. There's obviously that competitive nature between her and Boimler in terms of how her program was better than his. And I love the bit when she calls for the arch, and obviously all of the cinematic stuff as part of the holodeck program is being played out in a widescreen letterboxed cinematic aspect ratio in the episode. And then when the holodeck doors open, she has to actually step over the top of the letterboxes to get out of the holodeck, and then everything reverts to the normal 16:9 ratio in the episode. I thought that was quite funny, and I did laugh out loud at that moment. We get a bit of that red herring reveal about Will Boimler from the Titan being killed in action, which obviously makes Brad Boimler a bit depressed. Obviously that comes back later in the episode to maybe not be the case. Was fun as an Aussie seeing Sydney pop up in this episode. We've got the characters travelling back in time to Sydney. They're kind of fighting it out with the punks with the ghetto blaster, which is obviously, again, another Star Trek feature film reference straight out of Star Trek 4, Voyage Home, with the punk on the bus from that episode. And also, we obviously, that punk on the bus came back again in last season of Picard as well. So the punks on the buses, or in this case, the punks with the ghetto blasters in Sydney, having a whale of a time, pardon the pun, as we see our heroes travelling through all these different time periods. I was a little bit disappointed, though, when we got to the point where they went to the part of the timeline where it was the founding of the Federation, and we saw that same hallway or auditorium at Starfleet headquarters that we saw at the end of Star Trek Enterprise, where Archer did his kind of big speech and everything. I thought, oh, cool, like we're going to get maybe a little cameo or something from one of the Enterprise cast members, but we just saw it as a wide shot, and we didn't actually see any characters or any dealings that were going on in that. So I was kind of like a little bit, I thought I would have liked to see an Enterprise character pop up in that circumstance. We got a little bit of character development here in terms of the reveal that Tendi maybe doesn't want to be a science officer forever, and that she's definitely got her eye on command. You know, she wants to be a captain someday, and she's kind of just realised this, that, you know, she takes over the holodeck program, it restarts from the beginning again, but with her as the lead character, and it all plays out very quickly because rather than the Romulans stealing the time crystals or whatever, they end up stealing a bomb instead, which blows up the ship, and it's end of program. So Tendi certainly played out the whole storyline in a more efficient way than Boimler did. But Boimler gets a different ending altogether. We get another glimpse at another Star Trek feature film with him and Mariner on that planet with the giant godlike creature coming out of the rock, which obviously is a huge reference to the end of Star Trek V, with them going to that planet with the godlike entity or whatever that wanted to take the Enterprise, and, you know, Kirk ended up asking him, what does a god need with a starship? So there's a little bit of a back reference to many Star Trek to feature films in this episode of Lower Decks. And of course, the big ending for Boimler in this was the fact that the god character that they were kind of talking about, Kitty Ha, obviously turned out to be the Kitty Hawk, which again is just like same as V'Ger was Voyager. You know, it's just the name of a famous spaceship, or in this case, airplane or whatever, that just had some of its letters obscured to form a different word entirely, which is pretty much the plot of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. So yeah, so many little sprinklings of Star Trek feature film plots throughout this holodeck program. And of course, the big surprise in this episode was the fact that we got a little cameo appearance from George Takei as Captain Sulu. He's taken over Kirk's farm, I guess very similar to what we saw in Star Trek Generations. He's got the horses there in the barn. Kirk's off on some mission. Sulu's kind of house sitting for Kirk, looking after his horses for him. So it was very fun to see George Takei reprise his role as Hikaru Sulu in this episode of Lower Decks. And then, of course, just when we thought things were over, we get the little surprise twist ending, where it turns out that Will Boimler from the Titan isn't dead after all. He's been abducted by Section 31 operatives in a Defiant-class ship, where they bring him back to life and offer him a job working for Section 31. So yes, it will be very interesting to see what happens with Will Boimler comes back in a future episode with some shady Section 31 type dealings going on. All in all, I thought this was a very interesting episode. I think it was fun to have all the little references to the various different Star Trek feature films. We obviously got, you know, a bit of Star Trek 2 and a bit of Star Trek 4 and a bit of Star Trek 5 and a bit of Star Trek 10, and, you know, sprinklings of different Star Trek feature films throughout the course of the episode. However, the episode itself was probably a little bit directionless as a result. It was sort of just a big mixed up pot of moments from different sort of periods in, you know, sort of Starfleet history that kind of never kind of really connected to anything that else was going on. We had obviously Boimler and Mariner doing their thing, and we had Tendi and Rutherford doing their thing, playing out different elements. Boimler and Mariner with the knick-knack character, who was kind of like a bit of a Yoda-esque kind of character, a fun sort of slight, I guess, sort of Star Wars reference there. He spoke like Yoda. He kind of looked a little Yoda-esque, I guess, you know. But as a result, I guess we sort of didn't really have a kind of a really fully formed story. It was just a big collection of moments with these guys trying to play out different kind of aspects of the holodeck program. But it was fun, action-packed, graphics were great, a lot of exciting sequences and everything. And all these Crisis Point episodes tend to have a much bigger, grandiose kind of feel to it, which I think is really cool. So that was fun to see. Overall, yeah, I think it was a good episode. I enjoyed it, and looking forward to our last 2 episodes of the season. So we've got, second last episode next week, and then the week after that, we get a double banger with the last episode of Season 3 Lower Decks airing, and the first episode of Part 2 of Season 1 of Prodigy airing on the same day. So that's going to be a good one to look out for. Guys, let me know what your thoughts were in the comment section for Crisis Point 2, this episode of Lower Decks. Leave your thoughts in the comment section. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so, and be sure to leave a super thanks if you're able to. It really helps the channel out. Check out my other great videos, and also check out all my merch in the merch store. Heaps of new designs in there every week, so be sure to check that out if you haven't had a look for a while. And there's always a bargain going on where you can pick yourself up a great t-shirt, hoodie, mug, cap, coffee mug, whatever you like. I'll be back with my next video. I'll see you guys soon.